You have interrupted a citywide investigation. You stole evidence from my crime scene. And you got my one lead killed.
I was trying to help him.
But you didn't.
Jessica Jones, stop talking.
Who the hell are you?
My name is Matthew Murdoch. I'm your attorney.
You four. The devil of Hell's Kitchen. The smart-ass detective.
We got a problem?
The righteous ex-con.
My bad.
And the kid with a glowing fist.
Yes, I want you to be.
The war for New York is here.
Yes, I know enemy.
The more connections you have, the easier it will be to break you. You look like an idiot.
It's your scarf.
Welcome back to the channel, everyone, where we love talking about movies and more. I'm your host, Mason Phillips, and today I have a TV review for you for Marvel Television's The Defenders. Before we get any further in this video, I want to ask you guys to hit that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you get notified when new videos go live on this channel. When you guys do that, it always helps me out, and I greatly appreciate it. Now, let's talk about the plot. Four of Marvel's biggest heroes are each working individually, but have one common goal in mind: to save New York City. Burdened with their own personal challenges, Matt Murdock, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, and Danny Rand realize that they likely won't be able to accomplish their goals working solo. That realization leads them to team up and form the Defenders, a supergroup that is more equipped to save the Big Apple than the heroes would be if they continue to work on their own. Alright, so The Defenders, this was the big crossover event for all of the Marvel Netflix television shows. That includes Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Iron Fist, and Luke Cage. Now, this was supposed to be kind of their version of the Avengers, where in Phase 1 we had Iron Man, Hulk, Captain America, and Thor. All those franchises came together into the film The Avengers. That was the same thing here. All of these shows come into the big crossover event of The Defenders. Now, I think the hype for this was more exciting in the early days when these shows first got going on Netflix, in that we thought that these shows were going to be directly tied into and going towards everything with the Avengers and the movies, and that these characters would be crossing over. We even got the promise from the producers and the creators that that could be a possibility, and while that promise is finally being paid off with films like Spider-Man No Way Home, shows like Hawkeye, new Daredevil Born Again, these characters are finally crossing over with other characters within the MCU, characters that do appear in the films. They were very isolated at the time, and I think the excitement started to wane, especially with the quality of the shows as well. So it wasn't only the isolation of these characters being kept on Netflix and not really being able to interact with other characters, but the quality of these shows also started to dip. Daredevil was always great. Season 2 wasn't quite as good as Season 1, but Daredevil Season 1 and Season 2 were both very good seasons of television. Jessica Jones Season 1 was also very good, and Luke Cage Season 1, for the most part, was pretty good. It had a few speed bumps. It wasn't quite as good as I think everybody had hoped for, but it was still entertaining and fun. But then you get Iron Fist Season 1, and this season really plays into all of the stuff going on with the hand that was featured in Daredevil Season 1 and Season 2. It goes on into Iron Fist Season 1, and that show really just sucked the air, sucked the excitement out of everything, I think, building up to The Defenders. So by the time we get to The Defenders, it feels like one of these events that, while there was a lot of work put into it, it's kind of dead on arrival. Like, we knew we weren't going to get another season in a continuation. We knew we weren't going to get more crossovers out of these characters. There's probably going to be minor things here and there, but I think we all knew that this was probably all we were getting. You had a limited number of episodes This was the shortest season in all of the Marvel Netflix shows, 8 episodes versus 13 episodes that we had been getting. Now, I think that's a good thing. I'm glad it was a shorter season, but you could just kind of feel the excitement dying down. Now, I was excited for this show, especially the trailer that they dropped for this at Comic-Con. It's got that Nirvana song in there, so it gets you hyped, gets you excited. But with all of the other stuff going around, it's not that we knew that this show was going to be bad or expected the show to be bad, but we just kind of figured there wasn't anything else coming after the fact. We did get other seasons from these other shows like Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, Iron Fist, Daredevil, even got the Punisher show after this. So there was more stuff to come, but the crossover element of it, I think we kind of figured this is probably it, and we weren't really going to be getting any more of this down the line. So while I think that there was excitement at the beginning, by the time we got to the show, the excitement had kind of waned, but there is a lot of good to the show. I think the first episode is the best episode of the entire series in that it's able to juggle all the different tones and feels of all of these shows. They even have a nice color palette that tells you when you're with Daredevil, when you're with Luke Cage, Iron Fist, and Jessica Jones, shifts to the color palette and the style of filming for each specific show, so the tone is maintained. And then when the characters do eventually cross over with each other, it's not like the tone feels out of place. There's a new melding, a new tone established for when the group is together versus when the characters are separated. So it's able to maintain the show, carrying over the tone consistently from those shows as they all come together in this crossover. I appreciated that element of it. You knew when you were getting a Daredevil scene, you knew when you were getting a Luke Cage scene, an Iron Fist scene, or a Jessica Jones scene. All of that stuff really worked. And another cool thing that came with this crossover is you had directors from those other shows all coming together to direct certain episodes in The Defenders. So those tones were able to stay consistent because you had the directors from those other shows coming over. Now, one thing I find that is very interesting, the first episode of The Defenders is directed by S.J. Clarkson. If that name is familiar with you, it's because she directed the spectacular, and I am completely kidding when I say spectacular, movie Madam Web from last year. That is one of the worst movies I have seen from last year, but that aside, so somehow she directed that movie, that monstrosity. I don't think a lot of the directing of that film fell on her, but she's also able to direct great episodes in Jessica Jones and this first episode of The Defenders, which is amazing, which were really good. So her talents may be better suited for television, or she just needed a better script and a better team to make a better movie. So I'm not writing her off as a director because I see stuff like this and I know that she's capable of doing stuff that's really fun and super entertaining. So it's funny that she's directed something that I find so entertaining, and then she directed something else that I find so horrendous and so terrible. So it's kind of funny how that all worked together, but the differing tones, it's able to maintain the consistency from episode to episode and scene to scene. That was really cool, the crossover element of it. Of course, there's a novelty there when we get movies like The Avengers, characters from other franchises crossing over and interacting with each other. We get that here in The Defenders as well, and we got little snippets of that in other shows like Jerry Hogarth going from the Jessica Jones show, popping up in Daredevil and popping up in episodes of Iron Fist. We already had Claire kind of being like the Nick Fury of the Defenders series and popping up in each individual series before we get to the Defenders. So there's been that glue, that consistency, those characters that have been interacting with each other already, and then the big crossover here in characters like Daredevil meeting Iron Fist or Daredevil meeting Jessica Jones. And you get these really cool pairings like Daredevil, like Jessica Jones, characters that are very different from each other but also very similar to each other. They have a great chemistry with one another. I think Charlie Cox and Kristen Ritter have great chemistry with one another. Even Finn Jones and Mike Coulter have interesting chemistry with each other. And so I was glad that that pairing was able to work, because Iron Fist and Luke Cage are known as the heroes for hire in the comics, and so it's nice to finally get that interaction with these guys. And then Iron Fist did go on to appear in one episode of Luke Cage season 2, so it's cool that they were able to maintain that connection with these characters, and it's cool to see the establishment of their relationship here in this show. So there's a lot of great stuff, more so at the beginning than I think at the end, because I think there was an interesting story with the Hand, but it all does kind of fall apart when you get halfway through the show. So we'll get into that in the mixed and negative section. But all the actors did really great. Nice pairing, you know, they're able to maintain the consistency of tones between each show. So when you're jumping from scene to scene, you know which character you're with. The cast was great. Sigourney Weaver, although I think that her role was diminished as we get further on into the show, it was cool to see her inclusion here as well as the leader of the Hand. So all the stuff that started in the episode with Stick in season 1 of Daredevil, and then more so the majority of Daredevil season 2, all of Iron Fist season 1, you had all of these things going on together. Jessica Jones and Luke Cage kind of lived outside the Hand storyline and didn't really get involved in that aspect of it until this show, but the Daredevil stuff, the Iron Fist stuff, all leading into the Defenders. So I think it works overall to bring these characters together. The plot, the villains work overall to bring these characters together, but I think it kind of wanes as you get further on into the plot and you realize there's just not much substance to this plot. But we'll get into that in the mixed and negative section. But the actors did a really great job. I loved the continuation of Daredevil's storyline. Jessica Jones doesn't get a whole lot to do, but when she does, she really shines. Same thing for Luke Cage. And then Iron Fist gets a major improvement in this season as well. Both Finn Jones's acting and the combat, the choreography is so much better in this because he's had more time to train as the character, and they had a better stunt team with the Defenders than they did with Iron Fist. There's a greater budget in this, so he utilizes the Iron Fist a whole lot more than he ever did in Iron Fist Season 1. So Iron Fist gets the biggest glow up of any character from the previous shows here in the Defenders. And then of course you have all of the other players that do a great job and continue to do a great job like they did in their other shows. But Iron Fist is the standout improvement in this show, where he wasn't so great in his own show, but was a nice addition to the cast here in the Defenders. So I love those elements there. I even think the intro is good. It's not as good as the other shows. I don't even think it's as good as the Iron Fist intro. It's a little underwhelming at times, but it does work to bring together all of the different themes into one big theme for the Defenders. It's not like it takes elements from each theme and makes it one big thing, but it's inspired by all the separate themes. The Daredevil theme, the Jessica Jones theme, the Luke Cage theme, and the Iron Fist theme, and creates one big Defenders theme. So some would say it's a little underwhelming. I don't think it's as good as the individual themes, but it's still a good theme nonetheless. That's all I got in the good category, so let's go ahead and move on to the mixed section. All right, so what was mixed about the Defenders? Again, I kind of talked about this earlier, but as you get halfway through the show into about probably episode 5, maybe more so episode 6, but the last couple episodes of the Defenders, it kind of feels like the plot really dies down, and you kind of see that this whole thing, the whole thing that the Hand was behind, this big dastardly plot, was only to prolong the lives of each individual member of the Hand. They're all just afraid to die, and that's all there is. It's not like they're trying to launch a coup in Kunlun, or there's this big immense power in the middle of New York City, or like there's this dragon that's living in New York City. They just want the substance that keeps them alive and prolongs their life. And I think that's kind of underwhelming for an overall plot to bring together all of these individual heroes. So it was very underwhelming. I mean, yeah, in the Avengers, we got Loki coming down from another realm, or Age of Ultron, we've got Ultron raining down chaos and lifting a whole city out of the ground, threatening to wipe out a good portion of the human population. Now, I know this is a TV budget, can't do anything that grand, but I was hoping for something more to bring these characters together. It was a little lackluster and kind of a disappointing reason as to why we got these characters together in the first place. So I think the Hand, as threatening as they may have been at the beginning in the other shows, and maybe at the beginning of this show, there's really not a good plot and a good threat where they are concerned, and they're kind of a disappointing villain at the end of the day. Now, as far as anything else I have to nitpick, I'm just going to move on to the bad section because there's more stuff that I think is actually bad for the show. So let's go ahead and move on to the bad aspects of the Defenders. What I think was bad about the Defenders: Sigourney Weaver's Alexandra character. So disappointing. She's built up as this big villain, and then, spoiler alert, I know I usually just kind of spoil things in these TV reviews, but I'm going to give you guys a warning again. If you haven't seen the Defenders, go watch the show and then come back to this review. But spoiler alert, Elektra kills Alexandra in, I think, episode 6, and then she's just wiped out, and that's it. That's it for her character. There wasn't much to this character. There wasn't a lot of substance to this character. There wasn't a lot of meat to this role. And I think it's kind of a waste of Sigourney Weaver's talents that she was utilized in this way. But again, that's the Marvel villain problem, where I think Marvel television does better with villains, oddly enough, than Marvel films do. But this is one of the times where it kind of reverts back to the way Marvel films do it with their villains, and Alexandra just turns out to be a very lackluster villain, very disappointing villain. The other members of the Hand often are more interesting than she is. And so Elektra comes in, takes her out, and takes control of the Hand. Elektra as a character I also felt to be a little disappointing, and I thought she was more interesting in the Daredevil season than she was here in the Defenders. As far as Elodie Young's acting is concerned, she is not the problem. It was the writing behind this character that became the issue. So the ending, the entire ending of this show, didn't quite land the way it should have. It's not terrible, but it was just kinda weak and a little disappointing. That's the worst aspect about the Defenders. Overall, this season was fine. It was really good in the beginning, and then then it just kind of lost some steam as we got further on into the end of the show. So I can kind of see why there wasn't going to be another season, because of probably how hard it was to put this thing together, bringing all the different teams together from all of these shows. Crossover events are not easy to put together, and they probably thought that this was more trouble than it was worth than to continue and do another season of the Defenders. But we'll see. Maybe Disney Plus will bring us another season of the Defenders, and we'll get more of these crossovers later in the future. All right, final thoughts on the Defenders, guys. I did enjoy this show. It's pretty average, but it's not bad. It was so much better than Iron Fist Season 1. And as far as Iron Fist is concerned, this was a huge glow up for his character. A lot of great stuff that continued on with Matt Murdock. Jessica Jones was fun to watch. Luke Cage was fun to watch. All these characters do come together very well, and they all share great chemistry with one another. So it's nice to see these characters interacting with each other. That was the best part about the show, was the character interactions. But as far as the plot, the villain plot, that was a little lackluster, very disappointing. Sigourney Weaver as Alexandra was also very disappointing. I think they really wasted her, and I hope that maybe in this big multiverse saga, we can utilize her in a better way going forward if they ever decide to bring her back into the MCU, maybe as a different character rather than this character, because this character and this whole villain plot was very disappointing at the end of the day. But the action was fun. The character interactions were fun. Kind of an average season, a little disappointing compared to the Daredevil seasons, the first season of Jessica Jones, and even the first season of Luke Cage, but it was still fun nonetheless. I had a good time with it. If I'm going to give this season a rating, it's got to be a 4 out of 5 or a B+ on the letter scale. Average, but it was fun. I had a good time with it. If you've seen the Defenders, go down in the comment section and let me know what you thought of this show. Do you think they should do another season of the Defenders? Another big crossover down the line on Disney Plus? I'd love to hear from you. Before you go, remember to hit that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to get notified when new videos go live on this channel. When you guys do that, it always helps me out and I greatly appreciate it. Hope you all have an awesome and a fantastic day, and I'll see you in the next video.